Konnichiwa. Today we're going to talk about learning Japanese through anime. And this isn't just another topic. This is Immersion 101. If you're serious about learning Japanese rather than just learning about Japanese, it starts right here, right now. Can you learn Japanese through anime? Absolutely you can, and I would say that it's the best way to learn. A lot of people say you can't learn Japanese through anime, and in a way they're right. They're right because if you go about it the wrong way, you can't. And most people go about it the wrong way. What's the wrong way? Well, some people say that you can just watch anime without subtitles and try to get as much of the story as you can, and over time it will seep in. It won't. That's to say, unless you have very strong linguistic intuition, and if you have, absolutely go with it, but most people haven't. And if you don't have extraordinarily strong linguistic intuition, it's not going to do any good at all. You'll be wasting your time. Now, other people say that you can watch Japanese anime with English subtitles, and it'll help you to learn. It won't. You won't be wasting your time because you'll be enjoying the anime. But as far as learning Japanese goes, you might as well play golf. You'll learn the odd word here and there, but that's all. Your mind, which is programmed to take the line of least resistance, will focus on the subtitles nearly all the time. You'll recognize the odd word that the mind finds easy to pick up. What is the right way to learn Japanese through anime? It's watching Japanese anime in Japanese with Japanese subtitles. In the early stages, you'll hit a lot of words you don't know, and that's the way you're going to learn 90% of your Japanese vocabulary. That's the way I learned my Japanese vocabulary, except for perhaps 1,000 or so right at the beginning. That's the way you're going to learn most of your kanji. Again, it's not a bad thing to have a small base of kanji, but I don't recommend kanji courses or kanji books. This is the way to learn kanji, not as abstract entities, but as words that you encounter inside of anime. And I'm going to show you how you go about that in future videos. Now, why anime? Why not, say, manga or elementary readers or something like that? In one word, audio. In anime, nearly every word you ever see, you will also hear. And that's all important, because otherwise you're going to be pronouncing those words in your head and getting them wrong. But the second important thing about audio is this. When you've worked your way through an episode of anime, and it's going to take time, don't underestimate this. This is going to be the fight of your life in the early stages. And once you go through an anime, what you do is put the audio onto your phone or your iPod or onto an MP3 player, and you can get MP3 players really, really cheap. If you need to, you can get one off eBay for $1, shipping included. I'm not joking. Go and have a look. So you put that audio, the soundtrack of the anime, onto your music player, whatever it is, and you listen to it all the time. When I say all the time, I mean all the time. If you're doing something that requires your full concentration, turn it off or preferably turn it right down. Otherwise, you should be listening to that audio. Audio that you don't understand is no good for you at all, but once you've worked through the anime, you can understand at least a lot of what's being said, and it's going to get Japanese into your blood. It's going to help you to remember the vocabulary, although you also want to use Anki to help cement those words, and particularly those kanji, and we'll talk about that in another video too. So how do we actually get the soundtrack? In our next video, I'm going to point you at some resources for watching anime with Japanese subtitles, but these won't help us with the soundtrack unless we want to record directly from the computer's audio stream, which we can do but it's a bit of a pain, so I won't go into this here. The simplest methods, if your anime is on YouTube or Dailymotion or anything like that, you can download it directly from there. It probably won't have Japanese subtitles, but that's alright because we'll get those elsewhere. All you need is the audio. But if your anime isn't on one of those places, and it very likely won't be, what can you do? Well, if you have the anime file in any form, you can extract the audio. This can be done in various ways. You can use VLC, even that's a little bit fiddly. The method I prefer, because it's the simplest and also because it has other advantages, is to use Audacity. Audacity is a free, open source audio editing program, and all you have to do is download Audacity, open it up, drag your video file into its open window, and it won't open the video because it's not a video program, but it will extract the audio. Then after that, all you need to do is export it as MP3, WAV, FLAC, or whatever you want. If you want to export as MP3, you have to install a codec, but Audacity itself will guide you through that process, and it's very easy. The other advantage of Audacity is this. Here's the waveform of an anime that's been dragged into it. You can see that we have areas here that are quite distinguishable by being a lot louder than the rest. Now, these are going to be things like fight scenes, noisy henshin, transformation scenes, and of course the opening and closing music. You may want to get rid of all that. Fight scenes tend to have very little dialogue and a lot of noise. The same with henshin scenes. You may want the opening music or you may not want it. When you have it in Audacity, you have the ability to trim out anything that you don't want. If you don't find the songs useful, you can get rid of those. And on the whole, I would advise getting rid of fight scenes because you can't see what's going on. You're not getting any dialogue, and they tend to be just a lot of useless noise on the soundtrack, although they may be fun in the anime itself. The anime method gives you the best of audio learning with the best of visual learning, because you're working with the written word as well, and it gets you into real Japanese, actually learning Japanese, as opposed to just learning about Japanese. Now, some people say, oh, it's bad to learn Japanese from anime because you'll learn funny Japanese, slangy Japanese, you'll end up talking like an anime character. This is one of the strangest arguments I've ever heard. I'm not sure what planet these people live on. Obviously, when you start learning Japanese through anime, you don't know very much Japanese anyway. As you continue, you'll pick up more and more Japanese, you'll move on to other media, you'll probably keep on with anime, but you'll read books too, you'll have conversations with Japanese people. Nobody is likely to live in a test tube with just themselves and anime. It doesn't matter where you pick up your first Japanese from, so long as it's Japanese. If all you're ever going to do is watch anime, it doesn't really matter if you talk like an anime character anyway. Besides, there are worse things than talking like an anime character. And seriously, the chances of this happening unless you want it to happen are absurdly remote. So this is the core of how we learn Japanese through anime. We start off working slowly through anime episodes, putting the new vocabulary into Anki in order to pin it into place, and listening to the audio. Now, when you first do it, you're probably going to think there's something wrong with you because it goes so slowly. There's nothing wrong with you. It's a very, very slow process for everyone. The truth is that learning Japanese is a slow process at first. There isn't a fast method. Nearly all the other methods only teach you about Japanese, and to tell the truth, most learners prefer this. Why do they prefer it? Because it's easier. Because you don't jump into the water and start feeling you're drowning. You just stay on dry land learning things out of books, and you can pass exams that way. But there are lots of people who pass exams and are really not much closer to really knowing Japanese. A human friend of mine, well, not quite human, but a nearly human friend of mine, sat the JLPT2 exam a while ago, and the Japanese proctors at the exam spoke to each of the entrants as they came in and said a few words to reassure them in Japanese. And everyone that my friend heard looked embarrassed and responded in English. This is JLPT2, the second highest Japanese proficiency test, and the people taking it were too uncomfortable in actually using Japanese to use it. When addressed in Japanese, they replied in English. And this is normal. This is what happens with most people who learn about Japanese instead of learning Japanese. With the anime method, you can take your first step in learning Japanese. Lots of people put it off and say, well, maybe if I learn a core 6,000 words first, it'll get easier. The truth is that it won't get very much easier. You're still going to find it a struggle whenever you start learning real Japanese, and it's best to do it sooner rather than later. Now, I do think you should have a grounding in structure, and that's why I teach structure, because nobody else is teaching structure properly. So I recommend that you look at my structure course. If you're new to Japanese, please do the first dozen or so lessons before you start. If you're not new to Japanese, look over that course anyway and see if it doesn't open your eyes to the way the language really works as opposed to the way the textbooks told you it worked. But don't fall into the trap of thinking that you need to completely finish learning structure before you start actually learning Japanese. Once you've learned the basics of structure, which is really what I cover in my first dozen lessons, that's the point. To start entering into Japanese, you learn about Japanese just enough to get ready to learn Japanese. And then you do the two things concurrently. You learn Japanese and also learn about Japanese. It'll take a very long time to complete learning about Japanese. If you're a native English speaker and you have any curiosity at all, you haven't completely finished learning about English. But of course in Japanese there are many things that you're going to need to learn about, even while you're learning and using Japanese. I believe that the best way to start learning Japanese is Japanese anime with Japanese subtitles, and in future videos I'm going to give you detailed instructions on the various aspects of how to go about it. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below and I will answer as usual. I'd like to thank my gold Kokeshi patrons, my producer angels who make these videos possible, and all my patrons and supporters on Patreon and everywhere. You'll find my red Kokeshi patrons credited in the information section below. And I'd like to thank you for attending this lesson. これからもよろしくお願いします。Class dismissed.